Hello and welcome to another Eurogamer Next Gen newscast. This is episode 10, a nice round number to inch us towards the end of what has been a interesting year. I am joined, as usual, by Eurogamer reporter Emma Kent. Say hello,
Hey.
Emma. And I am joined once again by a Tom, but not the Tom we are used to. Tom Phillips is finished for Christmas. And he is probably in Norfolk somewhere, wondering how close Assassin's Creed Valhalla is to his hometown. In his stead, stepping into the breach, is Tom Morgan from Digital Foundry. Tom, say hello.
Hello, how's it going? I
Good.
see you've hit a kind of a quota of Toms of one, basically.
Yeah, nothing's changed. We got our Tom.
No.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
Fair
apart from some like facial hair, you're basically the same person. Tom, you are you're from Digital Foundry, which for those of you who don't know is the tech-focused, I guess, sister publication to Eurogamer. That all written Digital Foundry content is the exclusive preserve of Eurogamer, but Digital Foundry also has its wonderful YouTube channel where videos go out analyzing the technical side of games, and a fantastic job you guys do too, and you have a Patreon as well if people want to get involved in that.
Yeah.
And Tom, where are you joining us from? Because you are sat in front of what looks like a Kallax, is it, with stuff inside?
Yeah. So this is the classic Digital Foundry set, the Kallax filled with roughly, all sorts of gaming tech tat. So yeah. What's happened is you'll notice it's a bit bare because over the years people have kind of taken bits out of it that they liked and sort of left the dregs. So this is kind of like, all right, we've got the ukulele cartridge on N64 there, and yeah, a few bits and bobs, but nothing
just don't
crazy.
look too close. It looks impressive from a distance, but
yeah. Like a post-apocalyptic video game landscape, the Digital Foundry Kallax has been picked clean for supplies, leaving only the dregs behind, including an N64 cart. This week, again, there's a huge amount to talk about, and I think the week has been dominated by Cyberpunk. I don't think there's any getting away from that. The launch has been a spectacular catastrophe, no matter which way you look at it, for CD Projekt, which has issued multiple statements and emergency investor relations meetings and all sorts in a bid to try and address the terrible situation that has emerged resulting from the last gen, we call them last gen now, base PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox One, Xbox One X versions of this game. And this is why it's great to have you on, Tom, because you can talk about the differences between the versions and the crucial question, I think, which is, can Cyberpunk be saved on PS4 and Xbox One? CD Projekt is encouraging people to wait for updates, but will those updates make any sort of difference to the kind of game Cyberpunk is on those consoles? But first, let's run through the news, and it's been like an incredibly fast-moving story relating to Cyberpunk. Emma, you've been on top of this story. On the 14th of December, we're on the 17th of December now.
It's been like a week. It feels like a month at least.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really weird. I actually genuinely did a double take, looking at the calendar, thinking about how fast the Cyberpunk conversation has moved on. And just how many problems we've been getting through per day.
Well, to run through it, so following the recording of last week's episode, things continued to and the launch of Cyberpunk itself, things sort of started to develop over the weekend, as it emerged that the last gen versions of this game were really not up to par. On Sunday, we reported on some people managing to get a refund from Sony for this game, which some people consider to be faulty. And following on from that, really, CD Projekt then apologized for not showing the game on PS4 and Xbox One before launch. Emma, you covered this apology. What exactly are they apologising for, and why were they forced to?
Yeah, well, I guess they've kind of admitted that they really didn't put enough attention into the last gen console versions, which is kind of what everyone assumed anyway, because PC, it looks beautiful if you've got like a top end, really expensive PC. And yeah, the last gen consoles seem to have just been kind of left in the dust. So they basically admitted that they should have spent more time on those versions, and that they were actually working on the kind of console version like up until I think they gave reviewers like 1 day with code before the release date, and then obviously that's not enough time, and it makes them look dishonest, and they're claiming that it wasn't intentional and it was merely matter that they were working on it until really late, which is really more of a kind of management release date blunder, I'd say, if anything, but not great.
No, I mean, Tom, when you first caught eyes of Cyberpunk running on last gen console, what was your initial impression?
It was about where I thought it'd be. Actually, it was really good. First console I tried was the base PS4, and I thought, okay, this is looking fine so far. I take it through the first half hour, but then obviously it quickly descends into something that's okay. This is sort of you remember Grand Theft Auto 5 on PS3? We kind of accepted it because we knew it was a big game, like 20 frames per second to 30. You know, this is the reality of moving to a new generation with a very pioneering, cutting edge game. So I thought, fair enough. But then once you inject crashes and freezes and glitches at a rate of which is very unusual for a game, I think. I've not had so many crashes in like the first 2 hours of play in a big AAA release as this one. So I thought, at that point, you just have to say this is not ready at all, and actually, it's quite troubleshooting, quite worrying, I guess, that CDPR have pushed it out in this state, and knowingly as well. Obviously, we've had a hotfix or 1.04 that's come out, and you know they had this in mind, and they had a day one patch in mind. And as is so often the case with AAA development, this generation especially, you get like all the developers kind of honing in on that launch day patch to just clear everything up, sort of a Hail Mary moment where, okay, we're going to fix this. But when I picked up that PS4 version, as you say, Emma, like literally a day before it came out, I had the day one patch installed, and it was like, okay, let's just see what they've got. Nowhere near good enough. It was just absolutely, it was very surprising to see how bad it was.
Okay, so how does it look on Xbox One? I was absolutely terrified about this game running on Xbox One. Like, I have been for years. Whenever they've showed the game off before, even the very first time they showed it off being played live, I remember being in the room when that was happening at an E3. I was blown away by how good it looked, how dense the world was, and how detailed everything was, the fidelity of it. And I remember thinking, there's no way that this can run on an Xbox One. It just can't. It just can't work even. Yeah. So give it to us. How is it on Xbox One?
It's really woeful, but you know, I'm pretty sure we all expected that as well. In a sense, I mean, it could have gone one of two ways. They could have stripped all the kind of top end features out that make it Cyberpunk to try and salvage what they could of the frame rate. You know, they did a lot of it to, you know, the PS4, PS5, and Series X already. You know, there's a lot of the ray tracing isn't in those versions, and to an extent, like the Pro and One X versions have like curtailed NPC counts massively compared to PC. Like, it just doesn't look as thriving a city. So I thought, okay, base PS4 and Xbox One, especially Xbox One, they could go another step, but they didn't do as much as you would expect, like textures and shadows and a few bits here and there, but it does look very similar. It's just like the resolution that they dropped. quite significantly, and from there it's pretty much left for it to just run, and the frame rate really speaks for itself like this. There is no version of Cyberpunk that runs as badly as Xbox One.
Put that on the box. That's an Xbox exclusive right there.
Yeah. Runs worst on Xbox One.
Yeah, you won't get this frame rate anywhere else.
So I guess the best summary of it would be like the first 5 minutes I had with the game. It was, I mean, I literally loaded my DF sort of, my boss, Richard Ledbetter, has sort of played the game first on Xbox, and he handed me his save. And it's just as you kind of get into Night City, you're just leaving the kind of your block of flats and go out into the main city center. And so I loaded that save, and within 5 minutes, I sort of thought, oh, this is quite bad. Turned the corner, it then froze for a good minute, just sort of static screen. Me waiting there, going in and out of Xbox menus, thinking, is it going to come back? Anyway, it's I can't say for sure if the hotfix has addressed a lot of that. I hope it has, because that was it's pretty rough. But then, you know, just played on. But yeah, not a good sign, and it kind of carried on from there. I mean, I've had 8 like lockups like that, and 2 of them turned into system crashes, which
crashes, not just game crashes.
It boots to the system menu to say, yeah,
right,
yeah,
yikes. Okay, so obviously the game's in a complete state on those consoles, and what I think is interesting is the statements that have been made by CD Projekt's bosses about what they're going to do about this.
Right.
Emma, on the 15th of December, just a day after they apologized, CD Projekt held what feels like an emergency investor relations call. I think it was on the evening of the 14th, and we reported it on the 15th, where the bosses of the company they issued a statement on what's happening, what they're going to do, and they answered some questions from investors about what had gone wrong. I think this is really interesting. They 2 things here. They've said, we'll do everything possible to prove that we stick to our values. We truly hope that our efforts will let us rebuild the trust we have lost. This is interesting, I think, and it'd be great to get your take on this, Emma. CD Projekt has for years been like the golden child of video game development in the eyes of hardcore gamers. The Witcher is beloved. The values of CD Projekt are seen as being like anti-corporate, like the anti-Activision, anti-EA. They always do what's right for gamers. They don't, you know, riddle their games with microtransactions. They don't price gouge. They don't, you know, they make things right. They do things the right way. In 1 week, this reputation has completely reversed into what I can only say is now one of the most heavily criticized publishers in the world. In your opinion, Emma, can they rebuild trust?
Well, I think it's going to take them a damn long time, and they're going to have to work really hard over the next few months, which is unfortunate for the devs who've already been crunching for a considerable amount of time this year, who are then going to have to be asked to work hard again, I guess. Apparently, they're getting a little bit of a break over Christmas, but I can't imagine that's going to be a particularly relaxing one, knowing what waits on the other side.
No, or seeing the internet.
Yeah, no, I mean, that must suck, like working on a game for years and knowing they will know before it came out that it wasn't ready, and yeah, just seeing that kind of backlash to all your hard work, that must suck. It's a really bad situation for everyone involved. Yeah, so obviously the first thing is to just get performance sorted out on base consoles. That's like priority number 1, and then after that, I guess just trying to kind of work on content and iron out all those bugs. I think, CD Projekt's kind of dug itself into a bit of a hole by over promising with Cyberpunk 2077, because it's a good game, but they kind of set it up as if it was going to be this genre defining huge new thing, and the GTA of the exactly,
GTA in the future, right?
And it does feel very GTA, but it's not, I don't know, it's not like kind of groundbreaking game that people were expecting from those glossy demos, and I think it's going to be very hard for them to kind of work that back. And I don't know to what extent all of that cut content that was kind of discussed can actually be introduced, or if it's like too late for that, or how much they're going to be able to do. But yeah, a difficult struggle. I think they can definitely improve it, but it's not looking good at the moment.
Yeah, well, we can dig into what we want to see specifically from that, but I think it's important that we do mention their statement that they issued earlier this week, addressing why the game had released in such a mess on last gen consoles. And they say that after 3 delays, we as the management board were too focused on releasing the game. We underestimated the scale and complexity of the issues. We ignored the signals about the need for additional time to refine the game on the base last gen consoles. It was the wrong approach and against our business philosophy. On top of that, during the campaign, we showed the game mostly on PCs. This caused the loss of gamers' trust and the reputation that we've been building through a big part of our lives. So they're basically saying, they're holding their hands up and say they fucked it. They just completely fucked it in pretty much every way. Their reputation is in the gutter. They've said that, people can get refunds. You can't get a refund. I don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't make any special arrangements with Sony or Microsoft, which is kind of what was implied with that first statement. And obviously people are now discovering that it's just the same.
And judging by your article, Emma, it sounds like they're very keen to stress that they don't have any special arrangement. Like they say it several times over and over. This is the standard protocol for how to get a refund.
That's not what their original statement made it sound like.
Exactly. No. I feel like they're talking to 2 different crowds here as well, because obviously they want to appease their fan base and appear to be reasonable and understanding of the fact that it came out in a mess. But then you look at what's happened to their share price over the last week since they've told people that they can refund the game. Obviously that's going to spook investors, isn't it? So I think they've now realized, like, oh, hang on, maybe we need to be a little bit more careful with that. And that's why that's changed in the investor call.
Yeah, I mean, the whole refund situation is a mess. Their original statement made it sound like anyone could get a refund. Just ask and you'll get it. But I've reported that is not the case. It just isn't working out like that. Like, you can try, and you can, spend some time and energy trying, as you would with any game. But it's hard to get a refund. Some people are. Most people aren't. I spoke to a contact of mine at Game, staff saying that they've been told not to give refunds, to wait for updates, and they've referred people to the email address CD Projekt in its original statement. So, you bought the game, say you bought the game from Game, it's faulty on Xbox One, basically. Bring it back. Can I get a refund? This game doesn't work, it's crashing. No. Wait for updates. So there's this, it's just an enormous mess. So I think it is worth wondering, given that CD Projekt has said, please wait for updates, please wait for patches, we're going to try and fix this. Tom, is it your opinion that Cyberpunk on PS4 and Xbox One can be saved?
I think it can, insofar as they can sort the crashes out, and they have scope to sort the glitches, which are all obviously code red. In terms of QA, they're kind of like I'm very sure that's the sort of at the core of what CDPR is actually focusing on first. As for the rest, honestly, I think you've got to manage your expectations with the base consoles at this point. It's possible they could dial back a lot. They could get rid of a lot of what makes that game so cool in the first place, and then get if the performance is the thing we're talking about there, then yeah, they could do a lot. But it's, would you remove all those lovely sort of volumetric effects for the smoke and
everyone's smoking in this game?
Yeah. and would you want to dial back the NPC count? And because so often is the case, CPU performance on these consoles, those Jaguar cores on PS4 and Xbox One, are the things that hold it back. And that's why Series S actually runs really well, runs that game far better, despite the fact it's, you know, in terms of GPU spec, it's not as powerful as a One X. It's just the CPU. So a lot of what's attached to the CPU is stuff like AI and you know, physics, stuff like that, kind of integral stuff to making Cyberpunk the world it is. There's always a way. It's a problem-solving sort of exercise, and CDPR will have the firm answer to that. You know, they're very smart developers. They managed to get The Witcher 3 running on Switch, for heaven's sake. So it's anything's possible, but it's how far they're willing to go and how much time they're willing to invest to make it the version everyone hoped it would be.
Emma, it's a good point about Xbox Series S, because Emma, you're playing it on Xbox Series S.
Yeah, honestly, I feel pretty chuffed about it. So I just managed to like get the right level of console to play it without needing like the crazy gaming PC or anything. Although I do have it installed on PC as well, and I'm going to have a little tinker with mods and hopefully stuff like that later on. But yeah, no, on the Series S, it's been running absolutely fine. The only problem I've had is occasionally when I open up the map and like zoom out, the game goes and crashes, and then I'm like, oh no, not again. So I have to be a little bit careful with that. Hopefully they'll sort that out.
I'm playing on PS5.
How are you finding it?
I'm finding it all right generally. I get the occasional hard crash that involves having to shut the game down and restart it again. That's happened to me maybe a handful of times so far, and I'm just over 10 hours in, I think.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
and it can be very annoying, especially if you haven't saved for a while.
Yeah.
Or there hasn't been an auto save for a while. Apart from that, there are occasions where the frame rate clearly dips, but on the whole, it runs relatively smoothly. For me, more of the issues are on the issues are on PS5 when I'm playing the PS4 version on PS5 are less to do with performance and more to do with bugs and glitches. So
What's your best bug you've had so far?
I get a lot of T-posing characters in the like I can't help but laugh, but sometimes they turn up in really serious cutscenes or areas. You go to like a super cool cyberpunk synthwave club and everyone's smoking and it's moody and you're like, oh, this is cool, and you know there's a woman doing this like glitched into a table overlooking the dance floor, and you're like, oh my god.
It's amazing when they glide around like that as well.
Yeah, I've had some people just glide around. I was walking along the street. This is great. I was walking along the street and this woman just had her arm out like this, just frozen in place with her arm out like this, as if I was like, oh, you know, I was stood there for a good 5 minutes looking at her, trying to work out, you know, because it's not a T-pose.
Yeah.
It was literally like she had her arm over someone's shoulder who wasn't there.
Invisible or something.
Do you remember, you know, in the Matrix, that fight scene when like Neo and Morpheus are fighting, they do all these crazy like martial arts stances. It was like
crane style.
Yeah, it was like that, just completely frozen. And what's great is when you get these like frozen in place NPCs, you can still talk to them, but their mouth don't move. So I walked up to her and she's like this. And I interacted, and she went, "Fuck off!" Her mouth didn't move, and I was just like crying. So funny. So yeah, like I mean, it's not game-breaking stuff. Like
it's immersion-breaking, but
it's immersion-breaking, yeah. And I've had some quests that I couldn't do like the optional parts of because there was some bug.
Yeah, I've had a couple of side quests like that.
I hate that because I've got a real like hoover up, complete everything, like 100% mentality to these sort of games. And when I can't because of a little bug in a quest, it does my head in. But
yeah, some of the most annoying things. Yeah, the most annoying bugs I've had so far have been normally, it's when like you exit a quest where it's done something strange to like, I don't know, like either giving you like a weird glitch effect over your screen, or it's like you can't drive a car at this point, or something like that, and then it will just carry on beyond the quest, and I have to like reload it. So it's like rejog the game's memory so it doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah, actually,
and that's really irritating, actually, because I'll be like, why can't I scan anything? And it's like, oh, the game's doing its weird thing again.
I got locked in scan once, and I at the beginning of the game, you know, when you get in the car with Dex. I was locked in. I was locked in scan for the whole journey.
No.
And I was like, is this supposed to
then
be
you won't
like
get to see the cool volumetric smoke.
No. So I had to reload and do it again just to get out of scan mode. And this is the thing, right? So the game is in a current state where the problem is I just don't trust it. So I don't know if I just don't know if things are working the way they're supposed to. Did that quest, complete in the right way? Did I get what I was supposed to get in terms of reward for that? Did that NPC say the right thing in the right way? Did I
element of doubt
do it? Yeah, there's just in the back of my mind, I'm thinking,
the game?
Have I fucked this? Is this mission failed because I failed it, or is it just broken? And I hate that. I want things to. I'm role playing. I want to do things in a certain way, and if I can't, in these sorts of games, it really annoys me. And Tom, the game, in your opinion, the game seems to be running better on current gens, and by that I mean Xbox Series S, as you mentioned, Xbox Series X, and PS5. Do you think that is just the result of having access? Because this is all back compat, right? I don't believe there's any special work been done for these games to work on these machines. Well, at least on PS5.
It's been a bit of a surprise, honestly. Like CDPR has done a lot more than you might expect.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of behind the scenes, nothing major, but it's like they've bumped the resolution higher on the sort of performing resolution on PS5 is higher than PS4 Pro, which you wouldn't expect. But otherwise, that side's the same. I feel it seems like the transition from an Xbox One X to a Series X is more fluid in terms of what they can add, and that's been the case for a couple of games now. I think Cold War has Call of Duty Cold War's got 120 hertz mode on the Series X, not on PS5 right now. So there's a sort of precedent for this, and we've seen it here again where there's extra visual features, and there's also this toggle between a kind of performance and a resolution mode.
That's not on PS5.
Not on PS5. So there has been kind of a little dig in just to use a little bit and
little tinker.
Little tinker. Yeah, a little play with it. The real stuff obviously is to come. Was it early next year?
Yeah.
Right. So this is exactly what I wanted to ask you about. So Tom, what are you hoping to? So for background, CD Projekt have said that they're going to work on a proper next gen version of Cyberpunk, the kind of update that we've seen from a few games now, where it's not just running backward compatibility or this sort of little tinker way it's working on Xbox Series X. What are you hoping to see from that update?
Well, I think optimizing more closely to the next gen specs would be amazing. Like Series X and PS5 having a tight lock on 60 FPS. I want to see 2 modes basically, maybe more, but at the core 2 modes. I want to see a really good 60 FPS mode, no matter sort of what the cost. Make the resolution lower, drop the NPC count, do what you need, but let's get the game running really well. And on the other hand, I want to see this game broaching some of the settings that are on PC that we've not yet got on Series X5 back and pat. So some stuff, possibly the ray tracing RTX support. I'd love to see some features from that. If you've seen a side-by-side, I think my colleague Alex Spitali at Digital Foundry is about to put up a video about this, but ray tracing off in Cyberpunk is a very different looking game to ray tracing on. And when I saw his sort of side-by-sides, I was like head in hands, because I've just been playing consoles all this time, and really bad consoles.
The sacrifice for science, yeah. Tom. The sacrifice.
I know. So that obviously we've heard a lot about ray tracing.
Yeah. Who may or may not be an actual character in Cyberpunk.
But this would be, I'm sure you'll agree, something we'd all like to see on console, and it would make a nice mark, a stamp of what next gen is about, to see even a sort of a form of implementation of it in kind of an updated version. Might be too ambitious, we'll see, but obviously we'd have to push back the resolution compared to what's usually possible. But yeah, that's kind of where I want it to go. And it's a difficult one, because it's hard to imagine where CDPR's engineering priorities are right now. They've got so much to do. But I will say, you know,
give them a break. We can wait. God's sake.
I know. I will say, I know that there is some sympathy for CDPR in this up to release. You know, the hard work, the crunch we've heard about, but also the fact that they've had to make an unprecedented number of versions of this game compared to most console releases. They've had to make 7 console versions, essentially, if you factor in like the small tweaks to the PS5 and Series X and Series S. They've had to adapt for 7, and PC, and all the huge wealth of variables there with GPUs. So some sympathy there for how this has all turned out, but yeah, now it's really on like what we've got and whether it can be salvaged fast enough.
Well, I think it's an important distinction to make between the developers, the people who are crunching, who are, you know, going through brutal times to make this game work, and the company, the CD Projekt, you know, the management layer, the people at the top who are making these decisions.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you should, in fact, separate the two and have an enormous amount of sympathy for the people making the game happen. As I've said before, they're not stupid, and they'll have known the state the game was in, and they'll have known that it was frankly probably impossible to get the game in a decent place before the target launch. But the decisions that cause CD Projekt's the backlash are all made. They're not made by them. They're made by people at the top. So yeah, we should separate those two out. So I think you can have sympathy for CD Projekt, and you can also heavily criticize CD Projekt, and it's sort of like two different things. One of the unlikely winners from the Cyberpunk launch debacle has been Google Stadia. I did give Cyberpunk a shot on Google Stadia in response to some people saying, hold on, it works on Stadia. Everyone was like, you know, has forgotten Stadia a little bit, and you know, but this game has all of a sudden become the best reason to subscribe to Stadia, because it's actually playable, like in a much better way, in my sort of layman's opinion, much better than it is on console. I don't think it's quite where PC is. I don't know what the specs are around it, but I was getting like you know, I was getting stable experience on Stadia.
Is it better than PS5?
It feels to me like it is, in the respect that there's just no crashes. Like I wasn't getting any crashes on Stadia, and then you obviously, you know, you have the other advantages that you get from Stadia, you know, in terms of like, you know, no download, no updates, essentially, and yes, you're streaming it, so there's a little bit of, you know, there's a little bit of lag, but you know, this isn't like Call of Duty, you know, or FIFA. I'm not, you know, pixel counting or, you know, headshotting or anything. It's just, you know, Cyberpunk's a relatively breezy game in that respect. So I was like, hold on a minute, Stadia is okay. Tom, do you think the way that Stadia works gives a game like Cyberpunk more of a chance than it does on consoles? Could Stadia be like a stopgap for people while they wait for CD Projekt to sort things out?
Well, a lot of that, I think, comes down to the comparison, and we're going to do something about, you know, looking into Stadia future coverage, I think, just to see what really is going on there. If it is better than PS5 or Series X, that's amazing, and I'm really glad to hear this. You know, the frame rate's really stable, and you know, the stability all around. You know, the kind of key for Stadia really is that accessibility, and also bypassing the need for updating hardware. Like it seems like there's a lot going on server side with Stadia, where they can upgrade the parts behind the scenes to play these games. You can end up with you know, you can end up with different sort of spec hardware to run Cyberpunk, which might be exceeding what you know, PS5 might be doing. What we've got on the PC side to get all those amazing features which we've not got on PS5 and Series X is a bit of an issue. There's a real issue getting GPUs on the market right now. So even if you did want to buy your own PC and put together this PC to play with top-end features beyond next-gen consoles, you couldn't. Trust me, I've tried. I've looked on eBay, I've looked on Amazon, everywhere. That, you know, your RTX 3070s are out of stock, and you've got to jump on it.
Have you tried the scalping groups? They might have some.
I'm not even engaging those guys. So that's another topic. That's another topic.
Well,
yeah,
that is Tom. You are the segue king, because I wanted to close this off by talking about our old friends, the next gen console scalpers. But what you're talking about is scalping relating to graphics cards.
Yes.
And I haven't looked. I'm not as familiar with the situation regarding graphics cards as I am with consoles. So what you're saying right now is, Cyberpunk is runs wonderfully. It looks incredible on high-end PCs, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But you just can't make one because you can't buy these graphics cards. Is that the case?
For love nor money, it's just not coming. You can't do it. It's just really, really. There's no parts, basically. There's a real shortage of supply going up till, in the UK, till a lot of stores will be going till January before they restock, and that's the estimate. You know how things go. So yeah, so to look back quickly to Stadia, like, the promise there is you can get a lot of these features. Potentially, we'll have to look into it. But if it exceeds what's possible on the other consoles and gets closer to PC, that's amazing.
Phil Harrison redeemed. The Stadia showing its worth. Finally, a year after it comes out, there's a reason to subscribe. Emma, talking of scalpers, you wrote an interesting article this week about some UK politicians who have suggested legislation to stop PS5 and Xbox Series X and S scalping. What exactly has happened here?
Yeah, so basically, it's in really, really early stages. This is literally and they basically are saying, look, we need to regulate this like we do with secondary ticketing for kind of concerts and things like that and events. And they were suggesting, like, not in a huge amount of detail as to how this would actually be done, that you could prevent PC components and gaming consoles being sold kind of considerably over the manufacturer's recommended retail price. And also that you could make it illegal to resell items that are acquired using automatic bots, which is what we know, like, we think the scalping groups are doing to get their hands on consoles like faster than any kind of legitimate customer could, because they just scan the internet, and as soon as something becomes available, they just kind of get those orders in, and before you know it, they've got a whole batch. So those are the suggestions. It's basically, they're saying that it should be discussed in the Commons. It's got about 21 signatures, well, at least yesterday when I checked. Unfortunately, no Conservative MPs, which is unfortunate given that they're in government.
It's unfortunate they're in government. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting it's being brought up at all. Clearly, they realise that people are getting upset about this, and perhaps it's not a surprise given that it's dominated headlines not just in gaming press, but it's also made it to mainstream press, and people looking for gaming consoles this Christmas have struggled, and a lot of the blame has fallen on scalping.
Yeah. So it's new consoles, powerful graphics cards, just a shit show all around, really. And if you go on eBay right now, you know, the markup, you know, is astronomical on this stuff. I mean, you know, if you're not buying a photo of a PS5 by mistake, that is. Okay, so what I want to finish with is just by asking you if you're going to stick with Cyberpunk as is, or are you going to wait until they sort it out? Emma, I know you're near the end if you haven't completed it already, so I assume you're going to stick with it.
Yeah, I'm sticking with it. I'm hoping that I can replay it again later on, and also, of course, I'll be like fiddling around with it on PC and seeing how I can break it with mods or cheat engine or whatever.
Good.
Yeah, I'm tinkering with it now, and then hopefully we'll replay it a bit later. Definitely, we'll check out the next gen upgrade when that arrives on Series S. See if that improves stuff.
Tom, are you playing this for? Would you have played this for fun, or are you playing it for business only?
I've got to be honest. I'm a master of that first 1-2 hours of that game now. I've played this so many times.
Well, there's 3 different ways you can do that, at least, with this one.
I know, right? You know what? I'm going to need a breather after. And there's patches. Oh, God, there's going to be patches coming as well, like in early January, February, of course.
Yeah, well, there's one coming in the next 7 days at some point as well. Don't know how big that's going to be.
So I'm at this point, honestly, it's work right now. I'm afraid to say I can't enjoy the game. And this goes for so many games that I play. It's got to be a really special game to break through the tedium sometimes that goes with making technical analysis, and you've got to play it over and over and over. I'll see. Like, what I'd love to do is get to the end of this and have a really lovely, powerful PC and just play it with ray tracing on and enjoy like the vision CDPR set out all those years ago. That'd be grand. But for now, it's just like I'm stuck drudging through these bad consoles, trying to just fingers crossed that they can work again.
Wow. Yeah. God. Yeah. You definitely need a breather. Okay, well, I'm currently playing on PS5, and I think I will stick with it. But I'm treating it like almost like learning how to play the game, so I can play it properly when the next gen upgrade comes out. Because the game is so terrible at explaining itself in any sort of way that I'm making bad decisions. I know I am in the game, trying to play it properly, doing things probably not the ideal way. And I'm, making decisions in quests that are probably, that I might change, if in retrospect. So
I've discovered that one of my favorite characters, like, could have saved them, and I didn't realize. So I was like, "Good,
oh
okay.
No,
gonna have to replay it now." Yeah. I was like, it's very secret. I didn't actually know about it until I stumbled across it on the internet, and I was like, "Oh,
shit.
Brilliant!"
Yeah. God, that's making me think. Yeah, well, all this stuff, right? So hopefully the next gen update will be the way to play it. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate it. Tom, thank you for stepping away from the digital foundry anvil.
That's okay.
To give us your incredible insight. It's been really amazing talking to you about the tech side of things.
It's a
really
pleasure.
Appreciate that. For those who wish to follow the Cyberpunk grind on Tom's Twitter, where should they go? What's your Twitter handle?
It is @Catafiral. So it's a combination of cataclysm and feral. So
you're gonna have to explain that one for us, Tom. Now, what's that about?
You've done me here.
You've done yourself.
The history behind the Twitter handle is I was into Pokemon when I was much younger, and I made up a Pokemon with a name. And one of those things
where
you
do a drawing of it or something. Like,
yeah.
Oh. Sure. Okay, you have to tweet this.
Yeah, you need to tweet a picture of your make-believe Pokemon.
It's one of those things where you choose your handles, your email addresses when you're very young, and then you're like, oh, now I'm a professional and I've grown into adulthood and this is stuck.
Can I ask you a question, Tom?
Yeah.
How old were you when Twitter came out?
Gosh, Twitter?
Yeah. Because your excuse for your little handle there
doesn't hold up, does it?
We're checking
is
this
that
out.
You were very young when at the time. Okay, Wikipedia tells me Twitter launched in July 2006, 14 years ago. How old were you, Tom?
I must have been 19. All right, leave that. I had a choice. I took it. All right, old habits die hard. I chose it. I thought I'll stick with it.
Perfect. Okay. Well, yeah, that's your Twitter.
Oh, God.
And Emma, for those who wish to to follow your ongoing discoveries about Cyberpunk and the way it secretly works, which should they follow?
I'm at GoneEFK.
And I'm at WYP100. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.